Ren blinks in shock as a small army of men step into her dojo. Tret? No. That new race. Human. 10 of them and all chatting among themselves softly. One of them is pointing out all the small details to a clearly frustrated peer and is smacked in the back of the head by the others. She focuses through the small bolts of kutha she had bolted into her natural armor as a platen, and her eyes widen. That one is downright twisting the axiom around him in all sorts of directions, and all of them have multiple kutha discs on their persons. Welcome to the first step, where I set my students upon the path of self-betterment. The first step is merely to try, she says kindly. 7 out of 10 for the sales pitch, Ryu remarks. Ma'am, the first step is an excellent proposition, but we need a kick in the pants. We're not going to be here very long, so a quick and dirty lesson as to how to keep axiom reinforcement and enhancement going. Okay, you all have a few pieces of kutha. 2 of them, and I teach you all how to make the ones you have left into proper totems and how to use them at a basic level. Everything beyond it is mostly about combat styles and later advanced manipulations. You do all know how to draw in axiom and use it to strengthen yourself, right? Yes. Also, we know that you have to enhance everything to prevent injury. Too strong in the muscle and you'll crack bone. Too strong in bone and muscle and your organs and nerves. Very good. Now payment, please, she says, and the one already twisting the axiom around him throws a pair of coins at her that slow in midair and float in front of her in an excellent display of axiom control. Thank you, though I'm not sure why you need a lesson. I can see what you're doing to that axiom, she says, and he nods. Yes, but there's never any harm with a refresher course. Franklin replies, and she nods. Very good, students. A quick and dirty lesson. Your names, please? Miles here. Jake present and accounted for. I am Beck, and I look forward to seeing you bring out the wild blue yonder from... I'm Jean-Luc, he says, holding Beck's mouth shut. You may call me Sai. I am Ryu, and I am Lou. Here is Victor. I'm Marcus, and I'm looking forward to what we have to learn. And I'm Franklin, the ginger says. Very good. Now I want all of you to bring out one of your kutha discs and hold them in your preferred hand. Then pull in the axiom. She orders, and all of them do as instructed. She nods in appreciation and begins to pace around them. They want quick and dirty? Fine. She's got 3 hours until her next class. Time enough for the very basics to at least explained and demonstrated. They all pull it in evenly and strongly. Oddly so. They're all yanking at the axiom as if they can simply tell there is something there. Oh, right. They existed in null all their lives, meaning any sensation of axiom would stand out like a flare once they become aware of it. Excellent. Now focus it into the kutha rather than yourself. Pull it in through the kutha and move it within it. Don't worry about how the metal distorts or discolors. That's normal, and controlling it is much more advanced. She explains and leaves out the fact that a lot of axiom styles consider the shifts of pattern and color of totems like these to be a test of personality or even predict the future. The discs shift and morph in their hands, most of them taking on slight changes which would cause the refraction of light upon the metal to shift. Yet it's Franklin who seems to understand how it's distorting. It twists into a spiral, moving upwards, shifting in his hand as if alive. Then it collapses into a cube that divides itself into further cubes that shift and rearrange themselves to rotate, even though as a whole it is not. Yet it is. Oh God, here we go, Jean-Luc grumps as it shifts into what can only be identified as a representation of an atom of carbon. Then it dissolves and looks to be a tiny serpent slithering over his head before combining into an orb. The orb distorts, and a sound can be heard. It distorts in different ways to produce different sounds before it begins producing music with a heavy, thrumming beat. Knock it off! We need to get the lessons in, and your showing off isn't helping, Miles says, and Franklin looks up as if surprised. Apparently he had forgotten everyone else in his focus. Sorry, he says, crushing the kutha down in his fist before opening his hand to reveal the disc. Now looks like it was fit together like a child's puzzle. Still an immensely complicated trick, but nowhere near as distracting. What next, ma'am? He asks respectfully, holding the disc between 2 fingers with an eager expression on his face. Okay. What you've done is imprint your own personal touch into the kutha. This basic item will now be able to take over the duties of concentration for you. There are other types, of course. axiom-infused tattoos, brands, and even jewelry. But it all needs your personal touch to take the duty for you, which is the harder trick. So everyone get comfortable and get your axiom focus ready. It's a matter of raw will to place your focus into a totem, and it never gets harder than the first time. What about the other forms of totems? Marcus asks, and she smiles, glad to see that it's not going to be just one student dominating the class. They're harder to use, but once you know how, it's not so bad. There are advantages, of course. Jewelry is often worn at all times and can be harder to steal. A brand or tattoo blatantly cannot be taken away, which is as much as an advantage as it is a disadvantage, mostly due to the reactions others have to knowing that you're effectively armed and dangerous. Considering there are entire races that are living weapons out of a nightmare, I dare say that they can suck it up, Miles remarks. Oh? An acquaintance of ours ran afoul of political conspiracy in an arrangement system. He has many Zedin wives now. Young, desperate, and stupid Zedin wives that took his lack of refusal due to being knocked the hell out as an excuse to satisfy themselves on him. This was before he even woke up after being attacked and tranquilized by trespassing in the arrangement system. He explains, and Ren's jaw drops. But that's not how it works. They legally detain, not kidnap, and they run interviews and ensure that it's a good match, and, like the big man said, there was political conspiracy afoot. The much larger Jake says, even as he regards his totem. So is there a special trick, or do I just think really hard at putting things into the totem? Essentially, visualization helps. Then you get a feel for it. It becomes more and more reflexive the more used to it you get. Just pull in the axiom and empower yourself, then imagine it being tied to the totem rather than to your mind. That's it? Ryu asks. Yes. Is something wrong? It has to be more complicated than that. No, it's simple to explain, but a pain to actually do. Much like any martial art, really. You can summarize it as hit the other person and avoid getting hit yourself. Easy to say, not easy to do. Now, as I said, everyone get comfortable. The first time takes a while, she says before sitting on the padded floor. The first one to succeed is Ryu. He pushes and pushes until he opens his eyes in shock. She can see him shift the flow of energy until it's flowing through the modified disc and into him. He rolls his neck, and after slipping the coin into his pocket, he jumps up and shifts the momentum in the air so he spins before landing. Hey, nice, Lou notes. I'm next, he declares. Dear goodness, that took me an hour, Ryu notes as he glances at the clock. Time's 2/3 done, people put some effort into it, Miles says, and there are snorts and muttered mockery all around him. Oh, fine, Franklin remarks, and it slams into place. I've been messing with this for weeks, more or less constantly. I know how to do this. And you didn't think to explain it? Jake demands as Ren fights back a smile at the drama unfolding in front of her. She might be missing her favorite soap opera for this. But damn if the boys aren't fierce concentration. Okay, one. I've tried, and the ones who don't have their eyes glaze over blow me off. I've told you all that you need to take the axiomistic enhancement energy construct empowering you and place it within a physical receptacle so that it isn't torn apart when you're unable to consistently maintain it. Look, handsome, I've dedicated my life to axiom use and my eyes started to glaze over, and you just gave a basic description. Well, pardon the hell out of me if I have a hard time dumbing things down for these Morlocks. Franklin snarks and dodges a swipe from Beck. Be silent and allow me to become the wild blue yonder. He jokes, and Franklin chuckles before seemingly vanishing before reappearing next to Ren. How did you do that? I played mucky-muck with probability until I was here. That dumb enough for everyone? He explains before asking the entire group with a pissed-off look on his face. Fuck you too, Franklin. Jean-Luc notes, and Franklin simply sits down with a grin to watch them get back to focusing. Hey, do you recommend any books for making tattoos or brands that can be used as totems? He asks, and she looks at him oddly. Whisper so we don't bother them. Only if you tell me how you learned to make a proper totem by yourself. Simple. I wanted to make a sword covered in fire, so I practiced trying to put axiom into Kutha as a first practice step. Then I noticed that it was keeping up the same flow as when I put things into it. Then I did it again while focusing on enhancement. It worked. And why didn't you tell them that? That's what they blew off. The technical explanation goes miles over their heads, and the personal story they don't pay attention to. Before Jean-Luc suggested hiring a pro, I was maybe a day away from tying them all down and forcing them to pay attention. They wanted an actual authority on things. As crazy as they are, I can't really fault them for wanting someone accredited to explain things, annoying as it is. Franklin responds before leaning back and making his new totem float over his hand, before letting his arm drop while continuing to control the modified Kutha. It dances around and bobs around under his direct control without any seeming effort. Spoon, feel fear, felonious fiends for today, for the wild blue yonder has been unleashed, Beck suddenly shouts, getting several others to jump in shock. What? Ren asks in confusion. We've been using sort of mental imprints, personas to help keep focus. He's used a parody character who refers to himself as the wild blue yonder. Big, dumb, and almost completely immune to harm on top of being absurdly strong. Franklin explains, and she nods. It's a very good idea. Not as speedy as she would prefer, but very good on many levels. Not a bad idea. It would mess with mind readers. How common are mind-reading techniques? What are the signs, and what are the most common and effective countermeasures? He instantly demands, sitting up and looking her right in the eyes. She looks away, and all of them are staring right at her.